welcome to Women Who Lead, a series of the Learn, Lead, Go podcast where we spotlight extraordinary women who are breaking barriers, driving change, and inspiring others through their leadership. This episode is sponsored by Attard Leadership Academy, and I'm your host, Danina Attard. Today's guest is a true powerhouse in the field of cybersecurity, a leader, mentor, and advocate who is shaping the future of technology and inclusion. Joining us today is Candace Williams, a trailblazer in the cybersecurity industry and a true advocate for diversity and education. Candace currently serves as the Associate Director of Cybersecurity Leadership at Raytheon. She is also the founder of Ally Cybersecurity Solutions, an organization dedicated to normalizing the presence of women in cybersecurity. She is also a LinkedIn top voice, accomplished speaker, author of No Experience Required, Your Cybersecurity Career Kickstart Guide. In today's conversation, we'll explore Candace's leadership journey, her challenges, and the lessons she's learned along the way. We'll also discuss how she's leveraging her influence to open doors for others and create a lasting impact in cybersecurity. Candace, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I love these kind of conversations, so I'm looking forward to this discussion. So yeah, let's go for it.
Candace, I am so excited to have you. Our paths have crossed virtually for I think probably the last 3 or 4 years, but we recently at St. Pete's conference for technology, we got a chance to meet in person where you were the keynote speaker. One thing that I want our audience to know about you is that you are on top of your game. I have learned so much from reading your posts about cybersecurity, about your journey. And one thing that really appeals to me is that I, like millions of other people in this world, have a short attention span. So when I'm reading your posts, I'm being fully transparent here. When I'm reading your posts, I love that I can jump in, get what I need. I understand your point and your action items, and it's something that I can use. So I want to say thank you so very much for creating content that is relatable and applicable that people across the world can use.
And I appreciate that because content creation is one of the most challenging things we do as business owners and leaders. And unbeknownst to us, we're all content creators. You cannot get around it. I appreciate that very much.
You know, content creation is so important that I was reading an article, and actually I think it was on the Today Show, and also I heard it on a podcast where they were talking about content being so important that corporations are hiring internal content creators, people that actually work for the company, to be able to go live with social media posts talking about what it's like to work at that organization. So you are right. We are all content creators at some level.
Okay, I was going to share a part of my strategy for next year, 2025, was to help some businesses with their content as well, right? So being an influencer, which can have a hollow meaning depending on how you say it, but when you have knowledge and experience, you should be influencing, right? There's no way around it. And so part of my strategy was to help businesses amplify their voice in cybersecurity and get their products out there and share that content because it's so important. And not everybody can do it. Not everybody understands the hooks and the nuances. So it's important. Just a foot stump that it's important is something I'm definitely branching into next year for cybersecurity and Cyber Ally and myself. So yeah, it's important.
I love that. I'm here for that. So I can't wait to see how that launch looks. And audience, please make sure that you are connecting with Candace on LinkedIn, which I'll have that information for you. But right now, tell us about your cybersecurity story. How did you get involved, and where did your leadership journey in this area begin?
So my journey began in the military. So I served 6 years in the Air Force, and I kind of always had like a knack for technology, just even as a young girl. So when I joined the military, I automatically let the recruiters know I wanted to be in tech, working with computers, and they kind of gave me the spiel. You got to do it on your ASVAB. You got to, you got to do well. So I took it seriously, ended up being selected or assigned rather as a 3 Charlie, which at that point was like a computer communications operations role. And I didn't know it would lead to cybersecurity, right? I started out in the help desk, answering tickets, putting in tickets, updating accounts, all that kind of small stuff, and then moved into computer support, like small computer support, break fix. And then finally, my last assignment in the military was information assurance, which at the time was like the previous name for cybersecurity. And I was stationed in Korea when I got that assignment. Had no idea what I was doing, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the policy. I enjoyed the assessments. I enjoyed that structure. It was more of a governance role. And so when I left the military, that's literally what I moved into. It was information assurance, and the name changed back in, I think it was 2017 to cybersecurity. And then it really got nuanced, right? GRC, you got into like your SOC analyst, all these roles, red team, blue team, purple team. It became nuanced, and before it was just IA, right, or information security. And so that's how I started. When I left the military, I got into a entry-level role within the aerospace and defense industry. So it was Raytheon, which is a company I still work for now. And I was, again, entry-level, started at the bottom just because, my military experience translated, but it wasn't enough to move into like a leadership role, even though I was a E5 when I left the military. So started from ground up, and I took that role by the horns. I've always been the one to be serious about my craft and whatever I do, and I'm always going to learn about it to nauseam, and I'm going to ask every question I can. I'm raising my hand. I'm connecting with the right people, and so I started, again, entry level and moved into the current role I'm in now. It took 2023 is when I got this associate director position, but I moved from entry level ISO to technical lead to information system security manager to senior manager. Like, I literally hit every single rung up into this point. And I think a part of that was just, again, taking what I do seriously and being invested in my career. I read a book the other day. It was called So Good They Can't Ignore You, and it was by Cal Newport. And I'm bringing that up because someone asked me, like, man, you've been at your company for a long time. Why? Right? And a part of it was because I built that career capital as a leader, right? I built that up to where I had the trust, the autonomy, the reputation to move into these roles as a leader. And those are 3 huge things that anybody considering leadership should definitely be aware of and understand your why when you move into those leadership roles. And that was a part of mine, right? The autonomy, being able to make a difference, being able to support, be a change agent. I had ideas, right? I called myself an entrepreneur, which is an entrepreneur, but inside of a company. But all of that kind of played a role in my journey. And now, as a leader, it really is my desire to kind of reach back and do the very same thing. One thing I will say before I kind of pause, Vinny, to give you a chance to jump back in, is I didn't know that I was leadership, quote unquote, material, right? I didn't know that starting out. It was other people who saw leadership qualities in me and helped develop me. And so I always say that I want to pay that back, right? I didn't have a woman in cybersecurity, a Black woman in cybersecurity, a woman, period, in my space initially who I can look up to and really say, wow, I can do this. It was other allies and mentors who supported me in my journey, but they saw it in me first. I didn't see it in myself. I didn't even believe it until, I adopted and took on their belief in me until it, I realized it and owned the belief for myself as a leader. So that's kind of the journey, where I started and kind of where I am now, my thought process around leadership and becoming a leader.
As you were talking, I was taking some notes and then the last thing that you said was that I really didn't realize that I was a leader until, people were telling me. But even when you first began speaking, I was taking some notes because it said you came in with a plan when you were in the military. You had an idea of where you wanted to go. And then as you continue to share your journey, you shared some other things, your willingness to work to prove yourself. When you talked about you had to start at, an entry level, but you took that as an opportunity for you to grow and connect with the right people. And you had a sense of curiosity. And I love Jack Welch used to say that the greatest leaders have a sense of curiosity. They're asking questions and using the resource of people that they have around them. And if we've all heard, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And then so I find it interesting because a lot of women will say, oh, no, I didn't think I was a leader. And I will be transparent. When I first started off, I didn't think that was what I was. I just knew the steps that I needed to take to get to where I wanted to go and to get people's buy-in to get to where we wanted to go. So listeners, if you're listening, come in with a plan. When you're entering a new leadership role, you may not have A to Z mapped out, but at least have A, B, and C. The rest of it will formulate as you go, because if you have that plan, then when you're connecting with the right people in that organization or that network, you're putting the pieces together. Okay, this person can support me in reaching this goal, and as equally as important, I can support that person in something that they're actually doing. And then you touched on something that I think is really solid, building capital. And we do that through the words that we speak, the actions that we do, our behavior, our integrity. When we start a project, we finish it, how we treat people, that's building that capital.
It's true. That term was introduced to me because of the book I read, and I was like, this is exactly it. And I think what's interesting, and this is something that the book shared, and I didn't think of this until that, it was that it's not passion that gets us to where we want to go in our career, right? It is really getting good at something. And when you start out, you don't necessarily have the autonomy and the freedom to build. You don't have that starting out as an entry-level person, right? I had to follow the rules. I had to, check all the boxes. I had to do that until I got to the place I am now, where I'm leading the autonomy, the strategizing. Like, I'm in this role now, but it started with that career capital. And when people think, personal branding and influence and all those things, all of that separate from a company is a part of your capital as a professional, right? And I didn't really take and own that, separating myself from a company and owning that Candace is a professional and that I need to build my capital as an individual, no matter what company I worked for. It was something that I didn't do until recently, right? And it definitely moved me outside of just being a leader in my organization to being a leader within the industry. So I think it's just different perspectives when it comes to leadership and that career capital and where you build it, and how serious it is to make sure you keep you mentioned honest, integral, open, authentic leadership brand and presence no matter where you are. So it's so important. So important.
When we think about building capital, one of the things that I talk about in my book, Women Who Lead, Navigating a Path of Influence and Success, I break it down to 3 areas. Number 1 is internal change, external change, and gaining influence. And when you build on that capital, that opens the door to influence, because when you have built a reputation around being a thought leader in your industry who operates with integrity, who understands the concept of team dynamics, people then will take notice, and they will allow you to come into their world and invite you into their world, and you'll sit at tables that you might not otherwise have been invited to. So I think that it is very important that we spend time building that capital. It is never wasted time.
If I could just pull on that influence piece, at B-Sides, the conference we met at, that was the topic of the keynote, right? It was about influence, the influence hack, building your career in cybersecurity. And I kind of played with some of the principles that are in, it's a book called Influence. It's by Dr. Robert Cialdini, and he talks about the principles and how we leverage it. Because in cybersecurity, we don't have any sort of tangible ROI to show, right? To say, hey, invest in my cybersecurity program because X, Y, and Z. As a leader, right, you have to understand not only the business objectives, but you tie that into your sales and your marketing pitch to influence decisions, right? It's one of the levers that we have as leaders, especially in this space, especially in cybersecurity, understanding influence, even if it's career building. It's just so many reasons why we need to be able to own and understand our influence levels and how to grow it and build it. It's just so many reasons, and I love that topic. And that's really one of my 2025 words, something I'm going to really push in not only my own leadership, but in my mentees and those I sponsor, really getting them to understand that and build that for themselves and not have to wait on opportunity, right? Because influence, to your point, you said it, it draws opportunities. People recognize what you're doing. And if you don't have that, you're going to miss out on a whole lot. That's my 2025 word is influence.
When we talk about influence, I think it's really important for people to understand is that I'm not speaking from the perspective of when you're networking and meeting people that all you're focused on is what can I get from them? Because we know that's a one-sided relationship. It doesn't work.
Right.
It may get you through maybe one or two meetings, but after a while, people will see through you. When we're talking about gaining influence, that means adding value because it is a relationship that you're building because people don't do business with people they don't trust. And in order for you to influence someone's behavior, because ultimately you are attempting to influence their purchasing behavior, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a candidate for a job, you are attempting to influence their behavior to hire you. And you have to build on that relationship. And I think it is important that we recognize that and also recognize that this is not a one-time deal. You didn't just start building influence and say, I've got enough influence activated in my life. I don't need to do anything anymore. No, it's a continuous process. Yes, one of the things that I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it is that you are a woman of color in a male-dominated industry, which we know can present many challenges. How did you overcome some of your challenges as a leader? What keeps you going in this industry?
So I think about this a lot because I hear so many horror stories about women in this space, right? And I'm extremely grateful for the team that I've had and the team members I've worked with over the last 17 years. Extremely grateful. I've had, even though I mentioned earlier, I didn't have necessarily a female mentor, someone to look up to, but I had a lot of male allies within the company that I work in now, and I've had them almost from the beginning. And they've advocated for me, and when I've had scenarios where maybe a peer or someone who worked for me had issue with me, I always had some sort of backing and some sort of recourse for that scenario. I have not had in my 9-to-5 a situation where I was looked down on, talked down to, made to feel like because I'm a woman, I didn't have any value to add. I didn't have that experience at work. I was always empowered. My perspectives, my leadership skills were always valued. I was always put in situations that could stretch or challenge me. So I didn't necessarily have that struggle, again, in my 9-to-5. I would say where I've seen struggles, and it wasn't necessarily my own struggle. It was just when people were coming to me for support and wanting mentorship and wanting to move to the next level in their career, and they were telling me about their challenges, right? They were telling me they were, facing some sort of discrimination or some sort of scenarios where they were either talked down to or told something was out of reach because they were a woman or given bad advice from a male colleague or a leader in their space. So I haven't experienced that personally. I've just supported women who have, again, in my career. So that my experience has been a little bit different. And I do get nervous when I think about, as I continue to grow and when I think about stepping outside of the space that I'm in, because to your point, you don't know. And there's still a lot of people who wouldn't want to see me succeed, who wouldn't have wanted to see me become a director or become, what I am now, even in this space. And so I do understand the double tax we have as Black women, right? And then Black women in tech, and then, being African American or Black in general. And so I do consider those things, but I've been, again, fortunate in my career to not face that, even though people say, within that same space, they've had struggles within my same organization, but I have not had that experience. And it's because of the allies and people who've been around me to support me, even when, there have been scenarios that have been challenging. I hope that answers the question.
It does, but you're saying something that's very important, because you said that hasn't been your experience, but it has been others within experience. However, you said something that was very key, and I think it is probably has helped to insulate your experience, is that you said, I have allies, I have supporters, I have people that I can go to help. That is so key, because we all know organizations are made up of a group of people and none of us are perfect. Therefore, you did something strategic. That's that leadership quality coming in. I need a set of people around me that I can go to in time of need, and which brings up another thing. It is not a weakness to ask for assistance or to ask for advice. And I think you being smart enough to have a group of people has allowed you to flourish, which is what we wish for everyone's professional leadership journey, no matter who they are.
I was going to say it was that. I didn't think about it like that, but it was finding out who supported me. And I had a career coach a couple years ago who talked about the importance of having a strategic plan for your career. And I didn't have one before that, really, right? I kind of would set goals. I want to be this, I want to be that, but never understanding what value not only I can add to a company, but what a company can add to me. And so when I started looking at it from that lens, I did, you made a point earlier, I figured out who supported me, who needed to see me win, what did I need to do to make sure I align my actions, my words, whatever I did with the organization, so that I'm furthering their cause, yes, right, their strategy, right, but then also my own, right? And I was really strategic about it, and not in a manipulative sense, right? Anything you do you should understand what value it brings to you, but you should also know what value you bring to it. And I think that I built that value, and the right people saw me winning and supported me, and still do, and I appreciate them. So no, that is very true.
One of the things that I when I'm working with my clients and we're developing a leadership strategy, whether they are in their first leadership role or they're advancing to another one, is I say, as soon as you get into that role, number one, don't try to change the world in the first 30 days, because that is not going to happen. Spend some time doing informational interviews with people outside of your department. Number one, it's going to help you expand your network and see how what you do impacts other departments. And you can also, during those times, find out what's important to them and what values what do they value. And you can see, how does that align with what I am trying to achieve. You're doing all of this so that you're gathering information and making yourself open to have conversations with people. And we're not talking about a 2-hour dissertation or a long conversation, but a 15, 20-minute interview that says, you know what, I am new in this leadership role, and one of the things that I want to do is learn about how I can support the departments around me, and I see that you are a key person in X department. Do you mind if we spend 15 minutes, and here are 3 questions that I'd like to discuss with you. People are going to be very open, because it's nature that we like to talk about what we do. And that is one of the ways that you can find allies. Before we close up, one of the things that I want to talk about is Cyber Ally. Did I say that correct?
You did, yes.
Tell us what that represents and how this initiative reflects your values as a leader.
So Cyber Ally, initially, it was birthed in a salon chair with my stylist, right? We were having a conversation about, it's the truth. We were having a conversation about cybersecurity. I'm in Tampa, Florida, and we were talking about just the community what I did not see and what I hadn't experienced. And so I decided to, the genesis of it was a brunch, right? I just was like, I'm going to host a brunch. I'm just going to see, what women are in cybersecurity locally, and we're going to just get together. And that was the genesis. But it grew into a little bit more to where the mission of Cyber Ally now, right, is really rooted in empowerment, creating opportunities and a belief, honestly, right? We mentioned sponsoring and sharing opportunities and helping others recognize their power and lean into it as a leader. And just like for me, where I didn't see my own leadership qualities, someone saw it in me. My goal in Cyber Ally is to see that in other people and help cultivate it, right? It took a long time for me to really believe in myself and to see the value others saw in me, right? And so this is my way of ensuring others don't have to do that on their own, right? And so we have programs, we have events, and we create spaces for individuals to not just develop their skills, but also embrace their potential, right? See what they can do. And yeah, we have a membership. Again, we have the in-person events, partnerships. We partner with organizations to also help develop and grow our calls and further our calls. But the focus is really building that clarity, that confidence, their influence, the word we use, which is my 2025 word, and ultimately their authority, right? They'll have the tools and the support they need to take control of their careers and their futures in cyber. So that is Cyber Ally. That's really the genesis of it and the spirit of it and what we do within the organization. So we're creating opportunities and opening doors.
I love everything about that. Preparing current and next generations for a career that is fulfilling and successful in that industry. Listeners, you will have links to connect with Candace as well as links to learn more about the organization and how you can be engaged. Her LinkedIn link will also be available to you, and I highly encourage you to make sure that you connect and follow so that you can take advantage of all of the information and the nuggets that she puts out through that source. Before we leave, if you could leave one lasting message for those that are listening who want to grow as leaders in the tech industry, what would it be?
Something my sister always says to me whenever I'm nervous, because as a leader, you don't always have a blueprint, right? You still have to make decisions and lean on your experience and all the things you've been through to help you decide and move forward. And that's the word she always tells me, right? If you want to grow as a leader, every single level you reach, you have to lean in. You can't approach it with trepidation. You got to lean in, figure out what's what, ask the right questions, just go in it. And you mentioned earlier getting the right people in your corner, but you got to lean in. Just go for it. You're not going to know everything. That's fine. You shouldn't have to. You're gonna grow into those shoes. And that's what I've done in every single role. Even if I didn't feel ready, I'm using air quotes, ready, I had to lean in. Just lean in. Anxiety, fear aside, lean in.
I second that, and it's interesting that that is the advice that you would give, because one of my mottos is that I will take every shot. It might not be pretty, my legs might be shaking, I may want to quit, but I'm taking the shot if it's presented, and that I'm also going to create my own shots.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, and yes.
Truly enjoy learning about your experience and then having the opportunity to share it with my listeners. Once again, thanks so much for joining us. As you know, this is a part of the Women Who Lead podcast series where we help women to reach their leadership potential. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.